I had an entirely different video planned for today than the one that you're about to see, but I saw this great video that Simply Sally put together about how to put together a welcome sign from start to finish with her Thunder laser. And I thought I could make a video that would complement that one for a smaller laser with indoor only techniques. So she uses spray paint in her video, and I'm not gonna use any spray paint today. So if you are like me and you work in a craft space that is inside your home, so spray paint, or maybe it's cold, or maybe there are reasons you don't wanna use spray paint, so spray paint isn't your primary choice, I'm gonna give you some other options today of things that you can use just inside in your craft room. And I thought it would be a nice complement to her video and also really fun start to finish. She has a much bigger laser than I do. I have a Nova 24. So this is a smaller laser with a smaller bed size. So some of the things that you need to think about if you're using that are things we'll cover as well. I'll also give you some different tips and tricks to use in lightburn than what she did. She taught me a new one that I used in this video as well, but I'll teach you some other ones that might be helpful for you. So the sign we're gonna be making today is this one, the Hello Spring sign that is engraved on a pre-cut round and then stained. I used acrylic for the wording rather than painted wood. So if learning more about making signs with a Thunder Laser Nova 24 and some tips and tricks for finishing, lightburn, and a smaller size laser are interesting to you, let's get started. Hi, I'm Katie, and this is Things Katie Makes, where we talk all things lasers, Glowforge, and my Thunder Laser Nova 24. If you are looking for a supportive group of people to answer your questions in real time, I go live in our Facebook group, which you can find down in the comments, every once in a while to just share what I'm actually working on in real time. Some of the tips, some of the things that I'm finding out that may not make it into a YouTube video. So come join us there if you're really interested in those real-time tips and tricks. What are the things that you're gonna need for today's project? First, you'll need a backer. You can either cut something or you can buy something ready-made. Because I'm gonna engrave on this sign, I needed it to be no larger than 14 inches. So I have a 14-inch round for my 24 by 15 bed size in my Thunder Nova 24. I have a pre-cut round that I got in a set on Etsy. You could also have someone cut those for you, or you can cut this size yourself in your Nova 24. And that might actually be easier in this scenario than the way that I'm gonna show you that I did this to make sure that the engraving was in properly. Probably would have saved some time if I had just actually cut the round myself. The next thing that you're gonna want is potentially some masking. I didn't mask in this case, and I kind of wish that I had. The look that I was going for was originally more of a light wood with a dark engraving, and because of the settings that I used, I couldn't quite get that super dark engraving, and I wish that I could have paint filled it. So I'll show you what I did instead, but you might want some masking to allow yourself some room to fill that engraving if the darkness doesn't come out exactly like you want it. You'll also need a couple different sheets of acrylic. In this case, I used white and this really pretty pink from CMB Acrylic, which is one of my absolute favorite suppliers. With that acrylic, you're gonna want to have 3M tape. If you haven't heard me talk about this, go check out this video where I talk about my favorite glues, and you'll understand why I love this so much. I have a huge roll, which maybe I didn't need to get quite such a big roll, but I was so obsessed when I got it that I really went big. But I use it on everything because it really, especially if I want fine details, it makes it so much easier for me to make sure that the items don't end up broken. And you'll see that later on an item I didn't use the 3M tape on. If you aren't gonna use the 3M tape, I highly recommend this glue, the Loctite Super Glue, and this one is the Ultra Control Gel. This one specifically I really like because it doesn't run. So you can use teeny tiny dots, you don't need a lot of it, and it doesn't run out underneath your pieces. You do wanna make sure that you don't put too much on because if you do, it can spread, but it doesn't run. And that's a big difference when you're using something like this. You're gonna need baby wipes. I bought these in a big bulk pack, and I think I might be on my last one after a couple of years. So I use these for all different things. I use them for faux stains, for cleanups, and in this case, you'll see I use them to really kind of modify the way that the paint was looking on the sign. You'll want some paint. In this case, I used this coffee bean color from Folk Art and antique white from Apple Barrel. I also used my favorite Posca pen with the bullet tip. And this one is the smaller size. I have a larger size as well. They have an even smaller size if you need finer details. I also used a spongy brush and a large pack of sandpaper. All right, now that you've gathered your supplies, let's head over to Lightburn and look at how we need to prepare this SVG to make our sign. So now we need to bring the file into Lightburn. So we'll go into wherever you've saved the file, and you'll see that these are grayed out, even though they're SVGs, because I am looking at Lightburn only files right now. So once I switch to all supported, I can grab the file. And now as I think about the structure and how I want to lay this out, I want to use the job origin from the top center of my round. So I need to remove everything else from the board. Even if I choose to not output it, it's not going to change that center point on the round. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete the items that I don't need for now. Sometimes I might put them on a different layer, but in this case, I want to go ahead and remove them completely from the board. And because I'm engraving on this pre-cut round, I want those flowers to extend a little bit past the edge of the round just to give myself some room. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of the flowers. And what I realized here is that I actually grabbed this circle as well. So I'm going to click Control and unclick that circle so that I can grab just the flowers. And I'm going to lock their position, and then I will stretch them to be a little bit larger than the round, and then place that so that they are hanging off the edges a little bit. This will just give me a little bit of room to engrave all the way to the edge rather than having something that doesn't quite fit. And the next thing that I need to do is change the engraving settings. Now I like to save my settings on the layer, but I realized that these settings were not the correct settings I wanted for plywood. So I am going to change that speed to 400, and I'm going to change that power to 20. And this is really just starting from the starting point that Thunder provides. And then I play with it a little bit more over time. I ended up actually running this at about 600 speed and 25 power, which is why my engraving didn't come out as dark as I wanted. So you'll see me testing here for the speed of this job. And I wanted to just kind of see about how long I was committing to. So I wanted to test out a few of the settings in the layer to see if there was something better I could do to speed it up, but not have to change any of my power or my speed. So when I changed that bidirectional fill to be off, I doubled the time. So I went ahead and took that off, and then this was ready to go ahead and send to the laser. The first thing that I did after I placed the round in was to get those points right on the edges of the sign. So I jogged the laser to the center point, like you can see in Sally's video, and did that around all of the edges. Next, I set my focus depth using the tool provided by Thunder Laser. So I want that focus depth to be about 6 millimeters, and this piece of acrylic is about that. So I want to get that right underneath the lens and test and make sure that I have a nice tight fit. If I don't, I will move the bed up or down, or I will use the fine tuning on the edge of the nozzle to go ahead and fix that to get it right there on top of that acrylic. So now you can see exactly what this looked like when it came out of the laser. So it looks like maybe I have a dark engraving, but that's really just some engraving dust. And when I go to clean it off, you'll see that it didn't really remain after I dry brushed it and wiped it down a little bit. I'm going to speed up this process for you. So first I went over with just a stiff bristled brush, just a dry brush, to kind of get some of that char out of each of those little flowers, because that definitely was not the look I was going for. And then I went through with a baby wipe just to see what I was working with. And you can see that they're becoming quite a bit lighter as I go through with that baby wipe. Next, I wanted to create a faux stain. Now, I wish that I had either stained this whole thing before or had used masking so that I could get that dark engraving that I wanted, but I needed to switch gears. So to create a faux stain, I took a little bit of that brown paint and put it onto that baby wipe, and then just really worked that around until I got kind of the color that I liked. And it was a little bit too dark in some places, so just a lot of working that paint in, and that baby wipe will really just give you the ability to smooth it out all over and wherever you want. After finishing up that faux stain, I knew I really wanted to brighten up the look of the individual flowers. So I went over the entire round with an antique white paint and then really started picking that back up off of the main part of the round. I knew this was going to give me sort of a vintage look, and I went a little bit heavier in some of the spots to try to get it deeper into those engravings, and then just made sure that I got good coverage, especially in each of those flowers. In some places I needed to go over them multiple times to try to make sure that I got the coverage that I wanted. Then it was time for more work with those trusty baby wipes. And you can see I'm really focusing around the flowers, not as much on the flowers, trying to not remove too much of the paint from the flowers. But it's still coming up in some places. So I'm getting as much as I can from around the flowers before I go in with some sandpaper to really take off the last bit of that white where I don't want it. While I was prepping the backer, I went ahead and cut the pieces out of white acrylic, pink acrylic, and paint filled the little dots on the flower. I'm not going to show you that part today. I have a couple of different videos on acrylic and have a few more coming in the future. So if you have specific questions about acrylic, let me know. I did switch the nozzle over to the 6mm opening before I cut acrylic, which I like to do as that gives me a nice smooth edge. Here I'm taking off that backer for the 3M tape and just applying these. I didn't score an outline for this backer because I didn't think that it was necessary. You could, and in the file that is you can find for this backer, I have an option where you can score this as well. I just liked the flexibility of being able to put everything wherever I liked it with the wood grain and the engraving. So I placed the outside letters first just to give myself a sense of the spacing and then worked my way back in. Because this flower was a larger piece, I didn't feel like I needed to use the 3M, so I'm using my favorite Loctite Gel Ultra Control and just placing that on the flower. Now you'll see I make a mistake right here. I broke it. So I went ahead and placed the pieces down that I knew where I wanted it to go, knowing that once I put the center in, I would be able to place the outside pieces. So I took the 3M off the back of the center, smeared a little paint, and then I placed those pieces in. I was able to go ahead and fix that because of the way that this was constructed, but that's one reason that I really like to use that 3M tape. I tend to be more gentle than when I'm using glue. All right, and that's our finished sign. What do you think? It ended up a little more vintage looking than I was originally anticipating, but I like the way it turned out. I may do some other tests with some paint fills and some other colors and just play around a little bit to see about the engraving speed and depth, to see how dark I can actually get that without having to paint it, or if masking and using a paint fill works out better for me. I was really inspired by Sally's video, so if you haven't checked that out already, go check that out here. And remember, if you wanted to learn more about those glues, you can see that video right here. If you want to pick up this SVG for yourself, you can grab it in the description below. I'd love to see what you make with it, so please tag me over on Instagram at ThingsKatieMakes. See you in the next one.